Imagine yourself being stuck inside your place for 3 days because of rain. You've got a roof, heating, a fridge full of food, and a phone full of distractions, and you're still miserable. Now take all of that away. No roof, no walls, no dry clothes, no waterproof jacket. Put yourself in a forest in prehistoric Europe 60,000 years ago in the middle of a rainy season that won't quit for weeks. The temperature sits just above the point where it kills you, and everything you need, fire, food, warmth, gets harder to get the wetter it gets. How do you make it through that, not as a thought experiment, but as your daily life? In the minds of most people, rain doesn't seem to be as scary as predators and migrations get, but it was arguably more dangerous to early humans than almost anything with teeth. It killed fires, caused hypothermia, rotted food, flooded shelters, and it lasted for months at a time. And somehow, ancient humans didn't just survive it, they thrived in some of the wettest, most brutal climates on the planet. Here's how. The first thing to understand is that drowning isn't the real threat here. Heat loss is. Water pulls heat away from the body roughly 25 times faster than air does. The difference between feeling chilly in a cold room and dying in a cold lake. You don't need freezing temperatures for this to kill you. Wet clothes, a light wind, and something like 10 degrees Celsius is enough. And that describes a huge number of the places early humans lived. They learned this by watching each other die, which is why the single most important survival skill in wet weather wasn't finding food or building shelter. It was keeping the body's core temperature up. Fire was the obvious tool for that, and also the hardest one to hold on to in the rain. Wet wood won't light, wet tinder won't catch, and a fire that goes out in a hypothermic situation is a death sentence. So ancient humans stopped treating fire as something you start when you need it, and started treating it as something you never let die. Embers got wrapped in damp moss or specific bark and carried for hours, a practice found from the Inuit to indigenous Australians. Archaeological hearths in Europe show fires tended continuously for years, and someone's entire job in bad weather was simply to sit with the fire and keep it alive. One of the earliest divisions of labor visible in the record. But fire needs shelter to survive heavy rain, and this is where the caveman image falls apart. Caves are rare, often cold, often occupied by predators, and we only assume ancient humans lived in them because caves are where evidence happens to survive. Most ancient humans built their own shelters, and even the earliest ones show real environmental intelligence. Structures dating back around 400,000 years, long before Homo sapiens existed, used angled branches and layered leaves so rain ran off instead of through. Later, mammoth bone structures in Eastern Europe, around 15,000 years old, were anchored against wind and covered in hides with insulation built in. Those hides matter more than they sound like they should. Turning raw animal skin into something close to leather, by scraping it, treating it with fat, smoking it, was a genuine invention, and a waterproof one. It meant solving a problem that didn't exist yet. Evidence of hide scraping tools goes back at least 120,000 years. Rain didn't just threaten ancient humans, it made them sharper. Beyond shelter, survival depended on reading the world around them. The smell before rain, birds flying low, shifting wind and cloud color, all carried real information, and people read it the way we read road signs, automatically, because their lives depended on it. That reading extended to the ground itself. Cold air sinks, and wet air pools in low spots, so camping on a slight rise instead of a hollow meant the difference between a damp night and waking up in standing water. South-facing slopes dried faster, dense canopy blocked rain before it reached the ground, and good sheltering spots got reused for generations, which is why archaeological sites show layers of ash and bones stacked in the same locations again and again. Their bodies were shaped by this too. Constant cold and wet exposure blunts the cold shock response that causes so many cold water deaths today. Part of why hunter-gatherer populations in cold, wet climates show different metabolic profiles than people in climate-controlled environments now. They weren't a tougher species, they were a trained one, calibrated by an environment that never gives them any chill. None of it worked alone for long. A group huddled under a shelter holds heat no individual can manage alone. So sleeping arrangements in bad weather were communal by necessity. Labor got divided the way fire tending was. Younger, stronger people gathered and built. Older, more experienced people decided when to move and where to shelter. And children stayed at the center, surrounded by warm bodies. That working knowledge had to be taught, not reinvented each generation, which is likely why losing an elder meant losing a library, and why care for older, non-reproductive group members shows up so early in the record. It wasn't sentiment, it was preservation. Rain didn't pause hunger either. Prolonged wet weather made animals harder to track and buried plant foods under mud. So ancient humans stored food ahead of time, caching nuts, dried meat, and preserved fish in cool, dry spots, and shifted toward whatever the rain itself produced. Earthworms, flooded fish runs, fruiting mushrooms. And they shared during lean stretches, because a well-fed person in a starving group isn't a survivor. They're just next in line for food. The pattern is clear. Ancient humans didn't avoid the wettest places on Earth. They went straight into monsoon Southeast Asia, the drenched forests of coastal Europe, flood-prone river deltas, because wet environments were rich ones. The same rain that made life hard also filled the rivers with fish and the forests with food. They didn't experience rain as an interruption. They experienced it as a condition to be managed, one that demanded skill, but was never treated as alien or hostile. Every piece of technology we use to deal with rain today, waterproof coats, drainage systems, insulated walls, is downstream of someone figuring this out first, with nothing but time, attention, and the refusal to just lie down and get rained on. That's not primitive survival. That's the foundation everything else was built on.